welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to talk about creating our setup or configuration to build out our first VM. You can see I've already got a couple of virtual machines and I grouped them all together. So you can see I've already got a proper lab for a domain controller, a Windows machine, IIS and WAMP, and also have my hacking environment already here as well. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to create a new or add a new server because we're going to build a domain controller. And to add it and create a new configuration for a virtual machine, you have to head over here to new. You're going to have a nice create wizard that's going to pop up. And once you have this create wizard, you're going to give your first server a name. Keep the naming convention very simple and easy for you to follow. You can also put your domain or your host name. You're going to change your machine in here so you know which machine you connect to. So get a piece of paper, draw out on a piece of paper what you want to build out and how you're going to name these server labs for you. In this case, I'm going to build out a DC, a domain controller with Active Directory and DHCP on. So I'm going to call it DC. Call it dot home test. Give it a proper domain name so it keeps everything nice and clean. Now, because you're running install it on a Linux machine and you have only one hard drive in, or solid state disk, or whatever disk you have in there, by default it will put it to your home folder here. I'm going to change this home folder because I've got a second disk, solid state disk, where I installed my VMs to create my VM files. There's dedicated, so I'm going to drop down on my menu here. If you have two disks, I recommend keep your VMs off your host operating system disk. Just in case something breaks on your host, then at least all your machines is easily accessible from your second disk. So all I'm going to do is click other. I'm going to head over here to other location, VM home lab. And in here, I'm going to create a home test. I already created a home test folder previously. Create the folder, click there, name it as home test. So home test is here, so I'm going to just open that. And the next thing is you're going to need to create the ISO. Now, in this case, I've downloaded Server 2019, which I'm going to use for my domain controller. I do know that 2022 is out. We will build a 2022 server later on. We can create one for a SQL server or a IIS server or something like that. So in this case, we're going to head down here where we want to put the ISO. I'll show you in a later video where you can go and download ISOs from Microsoft. It's evaluation packages. So you can see this one here is going to be server eval, so it's evaluation license, which I have. You can see here, this is the server 2000 evaluation license here for this one. If I click on this one, you'll see it say this is the release evaluation. You can see where the disk is, and you can see the edition here of Windows Server 2019 standard. Now, if I'm just going to click next at this point in time, it's going to take me to an unintended install. So just to show you the screen, this is where you're going to set up your username, password, you put your license key in, and so forth. Now, I don't want to do this, okay? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit skip unintended install. You can go expert mode from here, or you can just stay in guided mode. So let's stay in guided mode just to make it easy for the newbies in this area. And then we're gonna just rename it again for ourselves because I changed it. Just go through the same process. Nice and quick. We're going to install the Server 2019. We're going to tick it. We're going to tick in there skip unintended install. We're going to click next. Now we're going to give our server a nice amount of RAM because Windows Server, so we know anywhere for a server really 6 gig for home, 4 to 6 gig is good, 2 gig as well good, depends on your specs that you bought and what you have available. You can see I've got 96 gig of RAM available to my machine. So I'm just going to make it nice and easy. So I'm just going to put 6 in front of the, take the 2 out. So it's going to be roughly about 6 gig. You can see I've got 24 CPUs. Now this has got a 12 core processor in, and it's got 12 virtual cores on top. So that gives us a total of 24 CPUs. In this case, I like to give my virtual machine 4 CPUs. I'm going to click next. Now this space, I've got a 1 terabyte space. Now I know Windows can be quite beefy when it does updates and all those things. I'm going to give it about a minimum of 150 gig of this space to build my domain controller. Click next. And this is going to give you a summary of what you just created. So you can see your disk space, your processor, base memory, and you can see where your files and what it's going to be called for the specific name. So we can click finish. You can see this is our machine. Now, before we actually start the machine up, we're going to go back into settings because we're going to change a few more things. So number one, I like to go to advanced and I like to change it to my shared clipboard to bidirectional and drag and drop bidirectional. Because once I installed the VirtualBox guest CD, that is my firmware for my virtual motherboard, I can drag and drop and copy from my host operating system onto the server. You can add more description for yourself. You can encrypt the disk if you want, but this is the virtual machine for home lab. Next, we go to system. We can see our RAM memory. We're going to go over to processor. You can see our processor is full. I like to have extended features, and I'm going to enable my PAE NX. We'll talk about a later video of what that means. Acceleration, I just leave it as default. My display, I want to make sure I'm maxed out on my display because I do have a graphics card built into my host system. Storage, I'm not going to change anything on the storage, but what I'm going to do is now is going to head over to my network. I'm going to have a NAT address because remember in the diagram we said the NAT address to our DC is going to supply the DEC, the domain controller, with the internet from our router. Then we're going to create another adapter. We're going to enable this adapter, and we're going to use this one for our DHCP, and this will become our internal network. So this is our internal network. So all other servers and workstations we're going to build, it's going to join our domain on this domain controller dchometest.org. They will all interact with this NIC to the domain controller to get the internet traffic, and you'll be able to manage all your devices via this network card. If you have shared folders, you can add shared folders on, but we'll talk to the shared folder later on for you as well to show you how that works. So once you have that, you click OK, and now you have your base system. Now we created our main configuration for this DC home test. We head over to start. And now we're starting up our virtual machine. Full screen for you. You can see now it loads Windows like you would load it from a server. So if you're familiar with building our HP DL servers, DL360s, 3080s, and so on, or maybe you're familiar with building our Blade servers, BL servers, for Dell and HP, even a Huawei. Then once you install your host operating system on these physical servers, this is basically the same installation step you can do. I know a lot of guys make use of Windows deployment services that work, or Autopilot, White Glove, but in this case we don't have any of that set up as yet, so we're just building our first domain controller from scratch. I'm based in the United Kingdom, so I've got an English keyboard. I'm going to head over here and change my language settings to UK. Don't really have an English accent, so I can't mimic the Queen's or the King's English very well. Head over here, click next. Now we're going to hit install. And this, you should be familiar if you build out Windows machines, how to build out a Windows setup for yourself. But remember, when we build this machine is not been configured yet. Because it's an evaluation package, I'm going to install the desktop evaluation with the desktop experience x64. So you can see this is the one I'm going to go for. And this is Windows Server 2019. Click Next. You're going to see the standard Microsoft license agreement that you're going to see say what you do at work. Just accept. You don't have to read through it. Just accept it. Click Next. Now, because we're installing this as a fresh install, we're not going to select upgrade because there's nothing installed previously on this machine. It's a blank installation because there's nothing we're going to keep. So we're just going to go to custom. We're going to install Windows only in advance for an advanced way. So once you click on it, it will take you over to where you can see your hard disk. And remember, this disk here is not your host hard disk. This is the disk that you created in your virtual box for your specific DC home test machine. At the moment, the disk space is unallocated, and we need to create a partition for it so where we can install it. So with Microsoft, you hit just new. It will ask you what is the size you want to use and apply to. So we want to utilize the whole space. We're going to click apply. It's going to create our standard partition set up for Microsoft, our system reserve space, and also our main partition. It'll take a couple of seconds. So there you go. You can see we have partition 1, our system reserve, which is normally about 500 meg. And then we have our second partition here for the rest of our 150 gig that we allocated 149. So next, we're going to just hit the next button. And this is where Microsoft is now going to install the server is now actually in progress installing. Just copy the files over and it's going to get this machine ready to run. And it's going to install the features. Now this might take some time. So at this point in time, I'm just going to stop the video. And we'll come back once we get up to the finish up stage and to show you the. So we're now in our final stages. The whole installation took roughly about 3 minutes. And now you can see the machine is going to reboot. It takes roughly about 7 seconds. If you want, you can just hit the restart button here. Just going to let it run through so you can actually see the process. Now the server is booting. We're not going to press any keys because we don't go back into the disk. We can detach the disk as well. I'll show you in a second. And now you're going to have a nice, fresh and clean Windows Server 2019. So a couple more steps to do just to get to the login screen. Machine is restarting for the second time. Just be patient with it. Machine will start loading again. And now we've got our customized settings. By default, we're going to have an administrator's account. All we need to do is to create a password. So this is a password which will be your local admin password eventually. So create something nice and difficult for you. Make it like it is at work. Mimic what you have in your corporate setup. Don't use the same passwords. So create new passwords. Confirm the password. Click finish. And there you have your server. So you can now head over to input, keyboard, press insert Control or delete. And now you can log into your machine for the first time. Machine is restarting for the second time. Profile. Be patient with it, just like it is at work. Not loading again. But do remember that at this point in time, this machine is just a box standard server which has only got access to the internet. I'm going to say yes to this. And we're going to have our server manager running. And from here on the next video, we'll go over on how to install domain controller setup, DHCP, and all the rest of the configuration we need to do. If you really like what you see today, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Share the knowledge. I always keep saying, guys, IT, practice what you do every day. It doesn't matter if you think you know it. The more you do it, the better you'll become. See you in the next video.